inaugural session, guys. Lots to learn, especially Subhu's comments about the overall growth story in India, the consumption story. We hear about it every day, fastest growing economy, and also in very turbulent times, we are still managing between 6 and 7% growth. And what does that mean? Because part of the whole piece is how do we enable the ecosystem today, especially if I look at the overall retail. We are roughly at about $1 trillion today, expected to get to $1.3 trillion in the next 2 to 3 years, 1.5 trillion by 2027. And while we keep talking about e-commerce, modern trade, there is about a 70%, 75%, which is going to be a general trade, small kiranas, mom and pop stores, which are going to continue to be a very much part of the ecosystem. And how do some of these initiatives that GS1 and various retailers and brands are collaborating to make it possible for them, because they are the guys who drive our day-to-day commerce, where we buy all our products from. And while we are focused a lot on the large retail, organized retail, there's a lot of discussion around how do some of these technologies enable the kiranas and the small retailers, the mom and pop stores, because that's going to be the driving force. And again, what we all know that, the big story in India is all about smartphone penetration. We are going to be at about 1 billion smartphones being sold. If you look at the UPI penetration, roughly about 139 trillion INR of overall transactions through UPI, roughly about $1.6 trillion. And what's driving this, and this is what is very interesting, just came across this very interesting report from Kantar, which talked a lot about how, if you look at the number of active internet users between urban and rural India, roughly amounts to about 360 million urban users and about 399 million rural users more than urban. And what's interesting in this is that almost 56% of new internet users will come from rural by 2025, and 57% were in 2022 were women. So again, you can see that this is where a lot of the technology that we are going to use, especially that Subrato mentioned in terms of where we are going to, in terms of barcoding, scanning, all of that is going to have a huge impact. And if you just look at the overall consumption in terms of where the internet usage is happening, while it continues to be mostly male dominated, but you're seeing, like I said, 57% of new internet users were women in 2022. That gap is going to get smaller and smaller. And if you look at where they are spending, if you look at by states, obviously, we've got Goa, Maharashtra, Kerala driving the top internet sort of connectivity, while states like Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh catching up with lots of initiatives happening there. And what's also interesting is that if you see where people are spending time, whether it's between entertainment, of course communication, because the phone is the primary use for that, but social media and net commerce means any online transaction that a customer may have made, whether it's buying tickets, etc. And again, all of this is very strongly linked to how the economy is going to develop. How do we make connectivity possible? How do we use barcoding and the various EAN codes to be able to enable the capture of data, and also to enable consumers to be able to access information easily. And if you can see that the highest growth is around net commerce and online shopping, which is roughly about 14% and 19% respectively. So that's where we are going to see a lot more traction. And I think as we get to the $1.5 trillion of retail in the next 4 to 5 years, that's going to be a big factor. Again, just looking at in terms of what do our urban and rural consumers spend time on? Very interesting to see, very similar in terms of the splits between entertainment, communication, and social media. So contrary to our expectations that the rural and urban consumer behavior is very different, actually it's not. We find that the amount of time being spent by them on internet usage is very similar. What's also interesting is that the non-active users are down from about 814 million in 20 to about 714 million in 2022. So that's about 100 million new additions to internet usage. And that really is a key factor which is going to drive a lot of the connectivity. And again, to point of what Subrato mentioned, so important for us to have the digital connectivity and the information available on products, so that as we get rural penetration, as we get products available in rural markets, they are able to have there is less counterfeiting, there is a lot more transparency. They know where the product is manufactured, that it is genuine, it is coming from the brands, because that's a huge issue. I think there's the figure is roughly about 11% is the counterfeit product in FMCG that today that companies are having to cope with, which is basically products which are made from overnight and small operations, which even if they get shut down and the company is able to take action against, they're able to revamp and set up a new operation very quickly. So again, if I just look at some of the other areas where people are spending time on, if you look at OTT channels, online gaming, net commerce become the three big areas. And what's also interesting is that if I look at digital payments, 338 million digital payments were users in 2022, of which 36% are from rural India. So again, as we get the penetration across these categories higher, and as we get more and more usage by consumers across rural and what we call urban India, it becomes very critical for them to have transparency of information and to be able to trust and also it enables our retailers like Reliance, Amazon, etc., which are trying to expand the footprint, trying to get product available to every single sort of village and small town. It becomes critical for them to be able to hold the product, to be able to trust what they are buying, and to enable transparency across the entire value chain. Just looking at a couple of more charts in terms of where we look at the overall split. If you look at online gaming by users, 60% of gamers are from urban India, 40% of these are from the top 9 cities. If I then look at from a digital payments, I already talked about that, 60% from urban India, and of that 60% are from top tier and mid-tier cities, but again 36% are rural in that. And again, very interesting data around basically if I look at the net commerce, which is completely, any transaction made online, again 60% from urban, and of that 60% from 10 lakh plus cities, and the 40% from smaller, what we call urban India. So lots of interesting penetration growth that's happening. That's what is expected to continue to drive the e-commerce business. And one last slide I'll come to. Clearly what we are seeing here is that the linear journey, that today if I look at it from a customer's point of view, the what, when, where, when, how, and why they shop a category, all of that has really changed, and the linear shopper journey today has really changed a lot because of all the digital connectivity that we are using our mobile phones for. And what we are seeing is a very, very fragmented, a non-linear journey, where almost at every point of a shopper's journey, you're able to touch and impact them, whether it's through friends and family, influencers, social media, traditional advertising. And it's no longer that you have to only impact them at the point of where which is the first area where they become familiar with the brand. But across the entire journey today, you are seeing interventions which are impacting consumers as they make consumers and shoppers as they make decisions. And what is very critical in all of this is, and this is a research that Deloitte did a few years ago, it has become, to drive customer satisfaction, it has become very, very important for consumers if they feel that you know them, if you feel that you engage them, 66% felt satisfied. And if you hear them, 62% feel satisfied, which means you're listening to what they are saying. And what we are saying now is that it's not B2C, but it is C2B. Consumer to business. More and more brands are saying, how am I listening to my consumers? How am I interacting with my consumers? How am I changing my offerings to the consumers? And lastly, it's about empowering them and delighting them. So all of this, all of that is being enabled by the technologies that we are putting out on our products. So whether a customer is buying a packet of chips or a Coke, he or she should be able to scan the barcode, scan the code over there to be understand where the product was made, when it was made, by which particular factory, what's the traceability, was it made in a sustainable way. All of these informations today are possible if we all collaborate to enable that here. So that's all I